Hey, what's going on, guys? What's happening? YouTube, you guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels, and I think we're going to call today's video Catching Up on COVID News. We're actually going to use the word coronavirus, COVID-19. I realize this video will not be monetized. I realize this video will likely not be shown in searches. And I believe this video will not be shown in sidebar recommendations. So if you enjoyed today's video, if you think these are stories people should hear about, go ahead and share this video, tweet it, share it on Reddit, post it on Facebook, share it on your social media, whatever, because it's not going to get any shares on YouTube, although it does seem like YouTube has lightened up a bit. Initially anything with, the word coronavirus or COVID-19 was getting automatically demonetized, and we've kind of heard stories, they've kind of lightened up on it a little bit, as long as you're not like trying to hawk snake oil cures or be especially like conspiratorial in your videos. They seem to have lightened up a little bit, and I've actually had luck getting two videos upon appeal actually monetized. One was about a guy hoarding face masks, and another one was about, I think I actually used the word coronavirus. So, it's something about coronavirus. But I actually managed to get two videos once they got to 1,000 views, and I was able to request a manual appeal. They were actually approved. So credit to YouTube for that. Right now we're looking at Drudge Report. Drudge Report, I think most people probably know about Drudge Report. It's actually a fascinating website. I've mentioned it in the past. I believe they get like 6 to 7 million views per day. And what's really kind of ironic about this is they don't actually create any of their own content. All Drudge Report does is link to other articles, other media sources, etc. But one thing that they do that's kind of fun or interesting is they come up with like really great like clickbaity titles to summarize an article, and you'll kind of see that as we start reading through here. One thing that I was actually just talking with a buddy about yesterday, Drudge Report tends to be kind of conservative leaning, right? They do a lot of crazy stories like 87-year-old race car driver, becomes a father. They do some kind of like National Enquirer kind of hypey type stories, but it is, definitely has kind of a conservative slant to it. And I didn't really think they would be like hyping and fear-mongering with the whole coronavirus thing. But at the same time, they are known for their clickbaity titles. So I kind of see why they're doing it, and I'm sure they're driving a ton of traffic. One reason that like this is just like an interesting publication, like I said, they get 6 to 7 million views a day. It's a very basic site, right? It looks like something made on like Netscape in like 1997. And in addition to being a really basic site, I think now they might be mobile friendly. But up until like the past year and a half ago, they were not even mobile friendly, which is like the most basic requirement to have a decent website. But, people still went there and you just pinch and zoom and scroll to the left and the right. And there's like a bunch of kind of fascinating stories. A lot of the stories that we're seeing have to do with like government exercising a lot of control and things like that. So I am going to be dropping a link down below to VPN Express. If you want to protect your privacy, Google is sharing your data with the government. Obviously, we've always known Google and Facebook use your data for ads and things like that. But if you want an added level of privacy and security, you might want to use a VPN. I know my buddy Icarus recommends the Opera browser. He says they have a built-in VPN. I'm personally a huge fan of VPN Express. I have it on my computer and on my phone. And it'll, hide your location. You can log in from public Wi-Fi more safely. If certain countries don't allow you to stream certain things on Netflix, you can get around that. A lot of benefits to having a VPN, so I'm going to link to VPN Express down below. It is my affiliate link, so I will earn a little something for anybody who signs up. But I personally use them. I don't have a free trial. I actually paid for it with my own money. Really like that service. I'll share some of my kind of unpopular coronavirus opinions with you guys before we get started. I don't think this is a non-issue. I don't think it's non-serious. But I do think we are overhyping the fuck out of this stuff. Essentially 15% of the population is at risk. So in my mind, rather than sheltering 100% of people to protect 15% of people, why don't we quarantine the 15% of people who are either immune compromised or elderly? We quarantine them, we support the hell out of them, we give them money to pay their rent, we deliver them groceries, whatever we need to do to support them and keep them safe. But the rest of us go on about living our lives. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're all pretty much going to get the coronavirus, right? Like there is no plan in where nobody gets it. The plan is basically we all get it slowly so we don't overwhelm hospitals. Well, I get some people are going to say, well, young people are getting sick too. Not everyone knows they're immune compromised. The vast majority of people who are going to wind up in a hospital are people who are either immune compromised or elderly. So if we quarantine them, if we isolate them, the vast majority of the rest of us are either not going to experience any symptoms at all or are going to experience mild symptoms of a cold or a mild flu and aren't going to be hospitalized. I don't see a scenario where we're overwhelming hospitals because of this, right? From the very start of this thing, that's what I've been saying. Why don't we isolate the people who are actually at risk and the rest of us go on about living our lives? And we have people like Mayor Cuomo saying, if all of this saves one life, it was worth it. And it's a nice thing to say, right? Like it feels good. It makes you warm and fuzzy to say, no one's going to die. We're going to do everything we can to stop people from dying. But if we really took that attitude towards life, towards society, if we were to ban cars today, we would, I don't know how many car accident related deaths there are a year, how many drunk driving deaths a year. I'm guessing it's in the tens of thousands. If we were to ban cars today, we would save tens of thousands of lives, yet nobody is talking about banning cars. Here in Chicago, on the south and west sides of the city, there is so much gun violence. We could have 50 people killed in a weekend. If we really cared that much about stopping that, we could devote 10 times the police resources we already do and probably cut down on a lot of deaths. Well, why hasn't Chicago done that over years, over decades? Well, because somebody decided, we're willing to sacrifice a lot of brown people if it saves us some money. So I think the idea that we're going to shut down the world and cause the economy to come to a standstill and destroy society as we know it and ruin the quality of everybody's life, I don't know what the number of deaths is acceptable to get back to normal. But even though it's not nice to say, I think it's kind of silly to say if all of this saves one life, it was worth it. Because like I said, we don't do that in any other areas of life. When the economy tanks, pretty much all of society's problems get worse. Suicides go up, domestic violence goes up, child abuse goes up. We've only been in this thing for, 2-3 weeks? And already the amount of suicides is starting to rise. I believe it's something like 48,000, 49,000 people a year committed suicide in 2018. Now, will some of these people are mentally ill and, probably nothing would stop that from happening besides, a better healthcare system and better treatment of mental illness. But I'm sure a fair number of those are due to financial reasons, right? Like the leading cause of divorce is money and financial reasons. So it would make sense that probably a significant amount of the suicides that happen each year are because of the poor economy, money worries, etc. So by tanking the economy, a lot of people are going to commit suicide. We've already seen domestic violence up. We've seen instances of severe child abuse up. So even though we're saving a lot of mamas and papas, make no mistake, we are killing a lot of people by shutting down society and shutting down the world. I think there's some middle ground between being cautious and protecting people. We'll still continuing on with our lives and shutting down society entirely. This whole thing just seems insane to me. And I saw Fauci the other day was asked, one of the reporters said, if, summer's right around the corner, as the weather starts getting nicer, do you think we'll be able to at some level get back to some semblance of normal everyday life? Go catch a ball game, see some live music in the park, go to the beach. And Fauci didn't entirely say no, but he said, until we see no new cases, we won't be returning to normal life. Now, let's think about this. Not like, as soon as we see the curve start to decline, as soon as we see no new cases, there might never be a time in history ever again where we don't see any new cases. So that's just crazy. And this could be endemic. Endemic means that it comes back every fall, or it's like the flu season where it comes back every year. If this comes back every year, what are we really doing? Are we going to shut down our economy for 9 months every year for the rest of eternity? It doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. So that's kind of my rant and some of my opinions. We'll kind of get into some of these stories right now. Like I said, I'm sure I'll get some hate for this, but I've been pretty much, within reason, going about my life as normal. I'm still seeing my clients. I'm still working. Last weekend I went out to a state park. There's this really cool buffalo park about an hour outside of the city. Went out there, went for a 6-mile hike. I would have kept my distance from people, but I didn't see a single person in the entire 4 or 5 hours I was out there. We see a lot of people shaming people for going for a run, for going for a bike ride. Like, these activities are all very safe to do. I also think it's pretty fucking dumb that we're shutting down all non-essential businesses. I saw a guy getting attacked on Reddit the other day because he said he was continuing to work. Well, you know what he does? He fixes cracks in car windshields and replaces car windshields. So, you know what? You could say that's non-essential, which it probably is, quote unquote, non-essential. But you schedule online with him, you pay him online, he shows up to your house, he works in your driveway all by himself on your car, you never see him, you never talk to him, he fixes your window, and he leaves. Like, there's, a business like his would be shut down, even though there's zero risk whatsoever in him continuing to do his job. If we want to shut down bars and restaurants, we want to shut down concert venues, okay, let's be cautious, that makes some sense. But shutting down all non-essential business, regardless of how much of a risk it poses to people actually catching the coronavirus, is just fucking stupid. So finally the end of my rant. Let's take a look at some of these stories here. New York business burglaries rise 75%. And I think this is a lot of people's fear is, social unrest. Are people going to start, running out of food, running out of money, going crazy? The government has essentially given people $1,200 to last them maybe till April 30th, maybe till the end of August, maybe for the next 18 months. That money's not going to last. I also saw a stat the other day. So the government, or the IRS, is issuing direct deposits to the bank account that you filed your taxes with last year. If you've changed bank accounts, or if you don't have a bank account and got a check, you could be looking at as long as 20 weeks. It's going to be August before you get your stimulus check. The government is paying out unemployment right now. The unemployment websites are crashing, meaning a lot of people can't apply. I noticed from just reading online, a lot of people are really confused about the unemployment process and don't even really know how to apply. There's backups. There's just a lot of confusion. Even that's not really gonna help people that much. So anyhow, New York sees more burglaries of businesses under coronavirus emergency measures. And of course, Wall Street Journal always paygates everything. I don't know why they even linked to Wall Street Journal. Stores prepare for civil unrest. So I saw this one earlier. Store owners are boarding up buildings across Manhattan, and this just kind of gives a creepy feeling. I don't know if you guys noticed that. I went to Micro Center the other day, and when I got to Micro Center, one thing I will say, I'm impressed with how quickly businesses have adapted and kind of shifted. Restaurants and bars who've never ordered takeout in the past were quick to get set up with Grubhub and try to be able to keep their employees employed and continued business as usual. When I went to Micro Center the other day, they had a system set up where when you walk up to the front door, they take your telephone number, they text you when it's your turn to come in. I think they were only allowing about 10 people in the store at one time. When it's your turn and you get the text, you go to the front door. It's fucking insane. Like, everyone around you is wearing masks and gloves. I know now they're calling on everybody to wear masks. I'm not going to be wearing a fucking mask anywhere. Everyone's wearing masks and gloves. When you get to the front door, a guy basically gives you a little rundown of what's going down. First, they make you sanitize your hands. There's a little hand sanitizer station. They tell you no cash. You can only pay with card. You have 20 minutes in the store. Stay 6 feet away from other people. And that was the experience going to Micro Center. My girlfriend was in Costco the other day, and they had some weird, it almost seemed like something out of The Purge. There was this crackly loudspeaker, and people, please remain calm, line up, keep 6 feet apart. It was just very Orwellian, very creepy. One other kind of weird thing, I noticed New York, the Empire State Building normally has a glowing white light and just makes the city look beautiful. And they changed it to a red siren, I guess, to support the emergency personnel. Although in reality, it looks like something out of an End of Times movie. Fog was rolling in over the city. This creepy, eerie red light was spinning. Bars, restaurants, luxury retailers here are starting to board up their windows to prevent people from looting and things like that. And I think to some extent, a lot of this stuff kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Maybe nobody was going to loot, but it almost puts you in the mindset of is that where we are in society right now? NYPD infection rate skyrockets past the city's average. One thing that I've been noticing about this whole thing, it seems like we have less of an idea what the fuck is going on now than we did a couple weeks ago. A couple weeks ago, it was we finally realized that this is serious. but it was kind of like, okay, well, we know like the incubation period is like 2 weeks, and this percent of people are not going to show symptoms, and it's got like a 2.6% death rate. Well, like now, as far as the stuff that I'm following recently, now the death rate like might be as low as 0.4%, or it could be as high as like 15%. Like, just the numbers are all over the place. Even Fauci and the other, quote unquote experts say that the data we're getting, it's not accurate. We can't really tell anything from it. But let's see. NYPD's aggressive policing risks spreading the coronavirus. I've noticed a lot of cities have kind of stopped enforcing a lot of laws. I know there was kind of a viral video recently. Maybe it was somewhere in either Seattle or somewhere in the Northeast. But people were just walking into Walgreens, stealing stuff just casually and openly because police aren't going to show up for anything like that. This is kind of a creepy story. Coronavirus patients ordered to wear GPS ankle monitors. And here's what I'm kind of talking about, where Drudge Report likes to kind of hype things up. So what this story is actually about, I think I read part of the story yesterday. If people have the coronavirus, they've been quarantined and told to go home and not expose themselves to others. I think even in good times, we shouldn't expose ourselves to others, right? Joke right there. But people who are like, know they have the coronavirus and continue going out in public, those are the people we're putting ankle monitors are. So I do think that's probably a good thing for all of society. But, we are entering kind of a creepy space in the world where we're willing to kind of push back civil liberties to feel safe. We saw this happen back around 9/11. Now everyone whines about the Patriot Act and everything else. But when people are scared, they're willing to give up all their rights. And then after the fact, they want to complain about losing their rights. And, right now we seem to be in a time where everybody's so freaked out that everybody's willing to give up all their freedom, all their liberty, all their rights just to feel safe, even though, in my opinion, most of these measures that are being taken aren't going to really make anybody safer anyways. But 2 Louisville coronavirus patients and a family member have been ordered by circuit court judges to isolate and wear tracking devices after health officials learned they'd been in the public against medical advice. Kind of a creepy story, but not quite as bad as the headline makes it seem. This one's interesting. Google releases location data to help authorities check lockdowns. Let's see. Coronavirus. Google releases location data to help authorities check lockdowns. Location data is being released by 131 countries so officials can see if people are obeying self-isolating rules. It's kind of creepy. I'm not going to read these like whole stories just because I know that gets kind of boring and I'll wind up losing my voice. Massachusetts governor, first in nation to do community tracing. I'm guessing that's something like South Korea where they can kind of track the spread of the disease. Let's kind of see. Massachusetts is stepping up its efforts to trace the coronavirus with a first in nation tracking initiative. Between the state and nonprofit partners, there will be tracing happening now with the program. A virtual call center is staffed with 1,000 contract tracers. They will contact coronavirus patients to learn about their recent activities. So I think that's not necessarily a horrible idea. That's kind of what South Korea did. It's like if you wound up coming down, if you find out today you had the coronavirus, you can tell this center, well, yesterday I was at Jewel Osco, and a day before I was at Target, and a day before I was at Micro Center, and then they can kind of like warn people, like if you were at this location, you may have been exposed, you might want to self-quarantine yourself. Delaware authorized to pull over out-of-state drivers. I saw a story the other day. Rhode Island was mad that people from New York were going to Rhode Island, escaping to their summer houses or renting Airbnbs and staying out there to get out of New York City. You know what this kind of reminds me of? There's a great Netflix show. I've talked about it a couple times. It's called Containment. And Containment is basically this pandemic breaks out in a certain area of the city. They wind up putting a big fence around the city. They later bring in storage containers and like quarantine this whole area of the city. If you try to leave, the police kill you. Obviously, they're trying to prevent the spread of the disease. And then anarchy basically breaks out in this area. And if you were one of the people unfortunate enough to get stuck in this quarantine area, you're like fighting for your life and fighting for survival against bands of marauders, or at more risk of getting the virus. Kind of fucking crazy. When states start trying to like lock down borders and do this stuff, that's kind of what it reminds me of. It's kind of crazy. I know Rhode Island started saying they were going to start pulling over people with New York plates. I think Florida said they were doing the same thing, and I think Texas announced recently that people with out-of-state plates would be pulled over and told to go home and self-quarantine at wherever they're staying in Texas for 14 days. Let's see. Police in Delaware have been given significant authority to pull over out-of-state drivers during the coronavirus pandemic. Delaware State Police say Governor John Kerry's state of emergency declaration authorizes any Delaware law enforcement officers to stop a vehicle driving within the state simply because it has out-of-state tags. Now, I believe that violates the Fourth Amendment, right? Search and seizure. But all our rights seem to go out the window when people are scared. Here in Illinois, Governor Pritzker declared like an emergency order, that gives him police powers or whatever for 30 days. But I believe according to either the Constitution or our state constitution, that only lasts for 30 days. So what I believe Illinois is planning on doing is they're going to release it for one day and then restart it again, right? So basically they're doing it for 30 days, turn it off for one day, do it for another 30 days. It's kind of like when like digital nomads do like border runs, right? You can go live in Thailand or Cambodia for 6 months, but then you have to leave before you can come back. So they run across the border to Vietnam, come right back and kind of, quote unquote, skirt the rules or whatever. That's kind of what Governor Pritzker is trying to do. So one thing I thought was kind of funny was if that is true, in theory, on I believe it's either April 8th or April 9th, they're going to release this order for one day. So there's going to be one wild out Freedom Day when these rules can't be enforced. And then we're right back to them. I haven't really read too much about that. That's just kind of my analysis of the situation. So take that with a grain of salt. LA tells paramedics to delay transporting cardiac patients. And this is one of the scary things right now. This sort of makes me understand and not trying to overwhelm hospitals is it's not just about people with coronavirus. If you get in a car accident, but all the medical resources are taken up by coronavirus people, your leg gets chopped off, your neck gets broken. There might not be anywhere for people to take it. And that is kind of scary. Let's see what this story is all about. Los Angeles County officials. Oh, LA. I was thinking Louisiana. Los Angeles County officials this week ordered paramedics to wait 5 minutes after reviving someone with cardiac arrest to see if their heart stops again before racing them to the hospital. A policy intended to reduce the number of high-risk patients flooding emergency rooms during the coronavirus pandemic. Let's see, what else do we got here? Social distancing is about to get darker. Let's see what this one's all about. If the sort of thing that most of us are seeing on social media and in our favorite publications is any indication, life under lockdown or shelter in place, or whatever we are now calling the unilateral suspension of civilization across half the globe, is some kind of secular retreat. Here, finally, we are told, is a chance to read those books gathering dust on the shelves, but not for long. We're cleaning, you see, and learn how to sew and make orange macaroons and play German board games with 450-page instruction manuals. Do things we keep telling each other. Go Zoom with grandma, start a Proust club, or host a virtual craft beer tasting. Play a video game with your dog. There's nothing wrong with these serial inducements to government-approved indoor activity. Making the best of a bad situation is a universal human impulse and more or less wholesome one. But it's important to recognize that for every person bent on using the coronavirus pandemic as an excuse to brush up on Urdu or figure out what to do with a fridge full of ricotta and lemons, there are just as many for whom no amount of buck-up self-improvements will make this experience any more miserable. Let's start with people who have no choice but to be in close quarters with people whom they would be better off far away from. Already there are reports in the United States of increased domestic violence under lockdowns. Think about this. If there's some abusive alcoholic father, the wife and kids are now trapped inside with him 24 hours a day, stewing around the house angry. We won't read any more of that, but I thought that was an interesting one. Obviously, you guys can see all these articles, so if there's any that you want to go back and read through fully yourself, feel free to do so. I don't get the whole... Here's the thing with social distancing, right? Social distancing means just that. It means social distancing. It doesn't mean we all need to lock ourselves in our closet. Like I said, I went out to a state park the other day. I realized, like, if you're talking about the Chicago lakefront or the bike trail, just because of the density of people packed into that place, those areas are probably going to be maybe more crowded than is safe. Um, but I took an hour ride outside of the city, went out to somewhere around Joliet or Shorewood or something like that. And there's this buffalo park, a 6 mile track, all this nature. Didn't come across a single person the entire time I was there. The only person I saw was, I don't know if it was a cop or a ranger or something like that, was in the parking lot when I pulled up. I was wondering if they were going to tell me that I couldn't go out there, but, they didn't say anything to me, and I didn't run into a single person the entire time. Let's see. Nuclear agency pulls back inspectors. Another CNN anchor tests positive. Cats can infect each other. Let's take a look at this one. I know there's a lot of cat lovers out there. I think they said you could give it to your dog or vice versa. Hold on to your cats. The rapidly spreading coronavirus can be transmitted between your feline pets, according to a new Chinese study. Researchers at the Harbin Veterinary Institute found that cats are not only susceptible to contracting COVID-19, but can pass it on to their furry friends as well. Okay, so apparently cats can spread this. In recent days, I've seen a lot more news that kind of contradicts news or advice that we heard earlier. Initially, it was keep 6 feet away. This spreads through, spit particles. If you cough, there's some particles floating in the air, a sneeze. Now I think they're saying that it's airborne and it could spread 27 feet. I think now they're saying that it could spread through fecal matter or poop as well. New York City was telling people to discontinue their rim job activities. I saw something, I think on Drudge Report. I don't know if we'll see it today or if the stories have changed. But they said to start flushing your toilet with the lid down, so that, poop particles don't go flying around. Airline bailouts begin. Let's take a look at this one. U.S. airlines apply for U.S. payroll to help, but terms still unclear. Major U.S. airlines applied on Friday for payroll grants from the U.S. Treasury meant to keep workers employed during a sharp downturn resulting from the coronavirus outbreak. Okay, so, I think that's kind of expected. 1,000 U.S. deaths in a single day. And even though I kind of downplay this, I don't mean to downplay it. It just, people are getting downright mean, and people are starting to, somebody posts a picture of them jogging in the park, and people are like, "You fucking asshole! Are you trying to kill my grandma?" So that's what kind of bothers me, and so that's kind of what causes me to almost downplay it more. Coronavirus claims 1,000 lives in a single day. The United States on Friday recorded at least 1,000 COVID-19 deaths in a single day, a sad milestone in the nation's war to stop the spread of novel virus, according to figures maintained by Johns Hopkins University. That's sad, but I mean, I don't feel like pulling it up right now, but how many people die a day from drug overdose? How many people die a day from gun violence? How many people die a day from the flu? How many people die a day from malnutrition or starvation? How many people die a day from not having clean water? People don't get all hyped up and emotional over these numbers, so it's just weird to me how the coronavirus makes everybody suddenly care. Let's see, bar orders release of more federal inmates. I actually think anybody who's in jail for definitely drug crimes and really anything nonviolent should be let out. It's almost cruel and unusual punishment to keep somebody in jail where they're almost certain to get it. Families watch helplessly as the virus hits nursing homes. That's sad. It's really sad to me. A lot of times, the grocery store baggers tend to be older people, maybe part-time job for them or to subsidize their Social Security. And I think maybe they've been sending them home and paying them at some grocery stores because I've been seeing less. But it's really sad to me when I see an 83-year-old guy bagging groceries at Jewel Osco. And he's one of the most at-risk people. And, he's in Jewel bagging groceries probably because he needs the money. So that's the people that I think we should be supporting. I've actually thought about it. I've seen a lot of old people out shopping. And I've almost wanted to ask some of them, hey, do you want to go sit in your car? And I'll run in and grab your groceries for you. But, in this world that we live in today, everyone's so unfriendly and scared of one another. I don't know. I think people would think I was a weirdo if I actually offered to do that. Let's see here. New Orleans has worst death rate in the USA. Let's see what this is about. I thought New York was the worst. I know Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana, I think are on the watch list as being really bad ones. As Louisiana becomes a growing hotspot, governor says an unhealthy population is more vulnerable. The South has a lot of obesity. So So I guess that's not really surprising. One thing that everybody should be doing right now, and I think there's probably a lot of lessons that we can take away from the coronavirus, from making sure we have an emergency fund, living within our means so that we have money for a rainy day. We're about 2 weeks in, and everybody's pretty much already broke. Here's the sickness map, so you can see North America is really bad, especially the east and west coast. South America not faring too bad. Mexico not faring too bad. I think that big dot in Mexico is Mexico City. This would actually be a good screenshot for the video. Total death, I'm guessing this is worldwide, 60,000. Total recovered, 233,000. So yeah, I'll just kind of let you guys gander at these stats for a little bit. Maybe we'll use that as the thumbnail. Kissinger, pandemic alters world order. The coronavirus pandemic will forever change the world. The U.S. must protect its citizens from disease while starting the urgent work of planning a new approach. Here's what's kind of a mindfuck to me, right? So when a big world event, a tragedy, something like this happens, there tends to be one of two things that happen. Either it changes our behavior temporarily, and then we kind of forget about it and resume back to our old behavior. Think 2008, the mortgage crisis. At that time, people said, I'm never going to use a credit card again. I'm going to live within my means. I'm not going to overspend. I'm going to have money for a rainy day. But a couple years later, the economy gets better and everybody kind of forgets about that and goes back to real life. Then you look at something like 9/11, and 9/11, here we are, what's that, 18 years later, and when you go to the airport, you're still taking your shoes off, taking your belt off, and having a TSA agent, scream at you to take out your laptop and power it up. And there's something that, I think has forever changed the world, and we're never going to go back to how it was before. Oh, man. My coffee's cold, and I don't want to pause this video because I'm wind up getting that stupid... Actually, the stupid error message already popped up. We'll pause the video so I can go heat my coffee back up. Okay, so coffee's warm. Let's continue on. It just occurred to me, I think I might wind up doing this video as a premiere, just because if I do it as a premiere, it will allow you guys to chat in the right sidebar, and people seem to have very differing views on this. So I think it could be maybe a little bit controversial and very interesting. So I think we're going to do this video as a premiere. But yeah, I was saying, it's... 9/11 altered how we live forever. 2008, we all kind of got back to our overspending and not living in our means. And I think it'll be interesting to see how this changes. Like, will there never be public sporting events again? Will people never go out to bars? Will people never go to an orgy? Will people never, all these weird group activities that we do? Are people going to be, are people going to work out in their home for the rest of eternity and nobody's ever going to go back to a gym? I think that'll be interesting to see. Or will this be something where people are kind of skittish for a couple months and then kind of return to their old lives? I've been watching a lot of pandemic end of world movies lately, whether it be Armageddon. I guess that's not a pandemic one, but Containment, Contagion, all these movies. And I was watching Bird Box the other day. Bird Box is the one with, is it Sandra Bullock, I think? Where if you look at The Thing, I don't think we ever found out what The Thing is, but if you look at The Thing, you'll either die or you'll go crazy and kill yourself. And at the end of the movie, they all wind up, she and those two kids wind up retreating to that Center for the Blind, and all those people survived because they can't see, right? So they can't see the thing. But basically for the rest of history, anytime the thing comes around, the birds warn them and they all have to close their eyes, and it's kind of changing how everybody lives. Will this forever change how we all live? It's kind of a mindfuck to think about. Let's see. DC mayor, 1 in 7 could be infected. These headlines that are kind of self-explanatory, I won't really go into unless they seem really interesting. This one was interesting. No mask for Trump. Tensions persist between Trump and medical advisors over the coronavirus. So I read a little bit of this earlier. I think now the recommendation from the CDC or the WHO or whatever is that everybody wear masks in public. And Trump's like, look, I know that's the advice. I'm not going to do it. I'm choosing not to do it. And that's kind of how I am too. I'll be honest. I think Trump didn't want to shut down the economy. I think he was kind of backed into a corner where he was the asshole if he didn't shut down the economy. What I think kind of triggered all this was as soon as the NBA suspended their season, I think that's when everybody else was like, oh shit, this is serious. And regardless of whether, I'm not going to say it's not serious, but regardless of how serious it is, once the NBA cancels their season, Well, if Major League Baseball keeps going, now Major League Baseball is the asshole, right? If South by Southwest puts on their show, now they're well, the NBA canceled their season, so why are you putting on your thing? And it becomes this like public shaming over anybody who doesn't agree that we all need to stop living life. Like at some point, what's the point of even living if we're all going to be locked inside and there's going to be no life? Rarely has a schism between President Trump and his own public health advisors over the coronavirus pandemic been put on display quite so starkly, even as he announced new federal recommendations on Friday that American workers wear masks when out in public. He immediately disavowed it. I'm choosing not to do it. The striking dichotomy underscored how often Mr. Trump has been at odds with medical experts seeking to guide his handling of the outbreak, as if some governors fighting it on the front lines, despite his move to extend social distancing guidelines through April 30th and his acknowledgement that the death toll could be staggering. So advice is that you wear masks. Trump said, I'm not gonna. I don't think that's really going to take off. We're not Asia. And I think to some extent that might be a negative thing, right? In the U.S., we're very individualistic. We like our freedoms. We like our liberty. And, Asian cultures, Asian countries seem to have a much more, I don't mean to say groupthink is in a bad way, but people are much more concerned about the whole, the society. It's much less individual. So people are much more willing to make sacrifices, whether it be, locking down like China did or whatever else. Let's see. USA beset by denial and dysfunction as coronavirus raged. The U.S. I don't feel like reading that one. Let's see. Singer Pink test positive. You know what's really weird to me? I was saying this to my girlfriend. So, I live in one of the areas that's one of the, I don't know if you more dangerous areas, more cases. I don't know anybody personally affected by this, but like every fucking CNN news anchor and all the celebrities have it. It's just kind of weird. Especially since they're some of the most vocal ones with like lecturing all of us about social distancing. How are they all getting it if they're all these experts on social distancing? Singer Pink says she and her son are now negative after testing positive 2 weeks ago. She's donating $1 million for COVID care. That's nice of her. Props to Pink for that. Married for 51 years. They died of COVID-19 6 minutes apart. Let's see. Before just a few weeks ago, Stuart and Adrienne Baker were perfectly healthy. The inseparable couple had been married for more than 51 years and were living in Boynton Beach, Florida, in retirement. Neither of them had any serious health issues. Then in mid-March, they started feeling ill. On Sunday, they both died 6 minutes apart. It's a sad story. I heard the other day there's still like 6,000 people trapped on cruise ships. I think off the coast of Florida. And Florida, like none of the states want to let the people get off there. So you have all these people trapped in this petri dish of a cruise ship. My girlfriend's dad was telling me some story the other day. Some people were stuck in Peru. And I know there's a big story about with the girls soccer team or volleyball team or whatever stuck over there. Apparently there was some American guy from Illinois. Actually, I think he was from Naperville. And apparently he decided to kind of be the group leader. He got a hotel. He was kind of taking care of everybody, trying to organize everybody getting back. And, my girlfriend's dad tells stories that are like way inaccurate sometimes. We always kind of joke he's always got fake news. But I guess he said this guy got left behind and everybody else he was helping wound up basically like ditching him and leaving without him. Not sure if that's an accurate story. I got kind of a funny story going along with that. So a while back, I went over to my girlfriend's house one night. We're getting ready to, go out somewhere. I think we're going to see her niece's play or something like that. And her dad was like, "Oh, did you hear that story?" And I was like, "What story?" And some of you guys may remember this. There was like a viral clip going around. And basically this guy ran a red light. Another car either also ran a red light or just happened to be coming along. No. One guy was going through an intersection. There was a couple with a baby crossing the street. This guy was about to hit the baby and his family or this woman, and this car comes out of nowhere and T-bones him and just narrowly stops this car from hitting the mother and the baby. And my girlfriend's dad was saying he was a hero. Like, this guy comes out of nowhere and hits the car. Well, it later turns out that this guy was on drugs and drunk. He just happened to run a red light and timing was on their side. And he happened to stop this other car from hitting the baby. After the car crash, he jumps out of the car and flees from police. When the police wind up finally catching up to him, he tries to stab the police officer. So my girlfriend's dad was trying to say this guy was like a hero, and in reality, it was like a drugged out guy who just ran a red light, and the timing happened to be perfect. This was an interesting one. So I had read this. Actually, let me pull it up and read it to you. I had read this really funny meme. I think I shared it on the community page of my YouTube. I'll read it for you guys right now. Imagine if 10 years ago you were approached by a time traveler and he was like, look, I don't have much time to explain. All I can tell you is that the year 2020 is going to be an absolute shit show. You know Donald Trump, the star of The Apprentice? Well, he's the president of the United States. In the beginning of 2020, he gets into a Twitter beef with Iran that almost starts World War III. Australia catches on fire and a woman tries to save it by selling pictures of her tits. Kobe Bryant passes away in a helicopter crash. Half the world is devastated. The other half just makes fucked up memes. A little time passes, and just when the world starts recovering from the loss of Kobe, some dude in China eats a fucking raw-ass bat and starts a global pandemic that specifically kills mamas and papas. Everyone loses their minds. 40% of the population thinks it's the end of the world. The other 40% thinks it's all fake. And 20% blames the whole thing on cell phone towers and Tom Hanks' fucking kids. The one thing everyone seems to agree on is that the only way to survive is by hoarding toilet paper. Grocery stores are ransacked, and Charmin Ultrasoft essentially replaces the US dollar as the official USA currency. Eventually, as hysteria grows and world governments are forced to shut the entire planet down and lock everyone in their houses, and the only person that can keep people from completely flipping out and starting huge riots is a gun-toting homosexual Oklahoma man with a meth addiction and 180 pet tires. I'd be like, here's a dollar now. Get away from me, crackhead. So I thought that was kind of funny. And the reason people are burning down cell phone towers, there's a lot of conspiracy theories going on right now. Feel free to check out like Reddit r/conspiracy. There's a bunch of like Twitter, like QAnon threads. A lot of people say this whole thing is like caused by 5G internet. And, you know, I don't really completely follow this. I got a couple buddies in the conspiracy theories. They say, man, what is that called when the planes leave that, like, chemtrails? They say, like, chemtrails are putting out, like, these radio transmitters into the air that we're all inhaling, and then 5G internet can activate them and make people sick. So the Sun has an article, holy smoke, idiots are burning 5G mass after conspiracy that radiation sparked the coronavirus is spread by celebs. Let's see. Conspiracy nuts are reportedly setting phone masts alight, targeting engineers after a bizarre 5G radiation claim caused by the deadly coronavirus spread. Now, I don't think it's crazy to say that 5G internet might have some detrimental health things. Most people don't want to live by cell phone towers, don't want to live by, those big high electricity power lines, because EMF radiation does cause some people negative effects. The verdict is still out over like whether even things like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth might cause health issues. They haven't been around to really see what the effects are decades down the road, 50 years down the road. So I think it's kind of stupid to completely wipe away the idea that 5G internet might not be healthy for us, although I don't know that we need to start burning them down. The theory originated last month after a video filmed at a U.S. health conference claimed Africa was not as affected by the disease because it did not have 5G in the region. Let's see, what's this? This mast was set alight in Birmingham. The myth was quickly debunked after the WHO confirmed there were thousands of COVID cases in Africa. The government has also confirmed there is no evidence that suggests 5G has anything to do with COVID. So if you guys want to read that story, that might be interesting. Let's see. Smartphone versus virus is privacy. Okay, let's see. Thousands of Zoom meeting recordings exposed online. I saw here I don't know if it was Illinois or specifically Chicago, but they were doing some type of government meeting, and hackers kept breaking into the meeting, either shouting or playing porn over the meeting. So Zoom's really taken off. I don't know if it's Zoom itself or people's own security, but yeah, a lot of people's Zoom stuff is getting hacked. Let's see. Smartphone versus virus. Is privacy always going to be a loser? In Europe, officials, doctors, and engineers are looking at how smartphones could be enlisted in the war against the spread of the new coronavirus. One obvious attraction for health officials is the possibility of using smartphones to find out with whom someone diagnosed with COVID-19 has been in contact with. all these things may actually be good for stopping the spread of the virus, but like how much of our civil liberties are we willing to give up in order to do that? That's an interesting question for debate. Anyone near Trump or Pence will be given rapid virus test. Let's see, Buchanan, America will never be the same. This crisis will alter the character of the country and the course of the republic. Depend on it, sir. When man knows he is to be hanged in a fortnight, it concentrates his mind wonderfully, said Samuel Johnson. And as it is with men, so it is with nations. Monday. I was just kind of curious to hear what they're going to say about like how society's not going to go back to normal. Yeah, it's too long. Nation is facing hunger crisis as demand for food banks soars. When people are stocking up on 3 years of canned food, you can pretty much guarantee most people aren't going to be donating to homeless shelters. By one of my clients' offices, there's like a day labor place, and there's a lot of homeless people over there. And so, most of them seem to want money and not food. I've offered them pizzas and granola bars and everything else. Most of them seem to want money instead of food. But definitely think about the homeless people right now. Nations face stockpiles surge boosts sales at Walmart. It's kind of funny. Walmart and a lot of other stocks like that, grocery stores, some of the consumer goods companies, their stocks really haven't been hit that hard by this because their sales are exploding. Economy in shambles. Trump scrambles for new 2020 message. Opposes mail-in voting for November. We saw what a disaster the Iowa caucuses were for the Democrats with their voting with phone apps. And I think part of that was because they hired that company who was like friends with Hillary Clinton to do it. Basically a company who shouldn't have been in charge of that, wound up getting the contract through nepotism. But we saw what a shit show that was. Like, let's go back to fucking paper ballots. Like, people are worried about the Russians infiltrating elections and election fraud, and we're going to allow everybody to like mail in votes or vote on smartphones. It doesn't seem like a very good system to me. I think no matter, look in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, someone's going to chop your fucking head off if you go vote and if you participate in democracy, but they're still out at the polls. So I don't think we should stop elections. I think elections should continue on as normal. Let's see here. Dems elevate healthcare as a virus. Era argument. Payroll dropped 700,000 and one in March. Record number of Americans not in labor force. I know a lot of people are predicting like a 30% unemployment rate. The number of Americans counted as not in the labor force, meaning they did not have a job and were not looking for a job, increased by 1,763,000 to a record 96,845,000 in March. Yeah, so let's see. Recession breadlines forming in Mar-a-Lago's shadow. Cushy quarantine. Swiss firm offers luxury isolation. Flying down empty roads in a Ferrari F8. What's this? Oh, of course, another pay-gated article. I'm kind of starting to tire out. So if my enthusiasm or the amount that we go into these stories starts getting less, just understand why. This was kind of an interesting story. So I believe there was a Navy ship that people started coming down with the coronavirus. The captain or whoever was in charge of the ship, sent out some letter that wound up going public saying like, please get us off of the ship. Everybody's going to wind up getting it. They actually took him out of his post. And he's kind of a hero among the soldiers as well as I think society in general. Kind of an interesting story. I'm not going to read it, but you guys may want to check that one out. Military recruiting struggles as enlistment stations close. How coronavirus is breaking down along familiar political lines. I saw something come out the other day. I think they now want you to isolate from your family in your own home. So if you're a husband, a wife, and 2 kids, it's not enough that you guys stay in your own home. They want you like each in your own bedroom, not interacting with one another. Seems kind of crazy to me. Let's see. Virus hits Boris Johnson. Priests reveal crisis unleashed. Intense demonic activity. Oppression everywhere. Ivanka hashtags together apart, and she's learning guitar. Survivor, in my blood, there may be answers. I know they're saying like people who've had it and survived, we might be able to somehow use their like blood plasma to either come up with a vaccine or give their blood to other people so they have antibodies and can better fight this. Venezuelan naval boat rams cruise liner, damages itself and sinks. A buddy of mine sent me a crazy story. I think it was out in California. They got those mercy ships or whatever those hospital ships are. Some fucking lunatic tried to crash a locomotive train into a boat. I'm not sure how he thought he was going to crash a train into a boat, but that story kind of flew under the radar the other day. Let's see. Formula One boss fathers child at 89. This is like the one story on here that's not coronavirus related, right? Is it okay to joke? Comedians navigate dark humor in dark times. Everyone gets super butthurt about everything now. Like, comedy is supposed to have no bounds, in my opinion. People have no right to be offended when it comes to comedy. That's what comedy is. Tiger among animals, officials find in search of Texas home. Utah rocked by 700 quakes in weeks since 5.7 meg tremor. What else do we got here? Let's see if any of the headline stories have changed. No. Inside coronavirus testing failure, alarm and dismay among scientists who sought to help. I saw a story the other day. A bunch of coronavirus tests that wound up going to the UK were actually contaminated with the coronavirus. So when they stick this long Q-tip up your nose, they're actually going to be giving you the coronavirus. That was a topic of a lot of conspiracy theories. I'm not sure how something like that would happen, but that's an interesting story if anybody wants to look into it. Why we don't know how many Americans are infected and might never know. Some states receive masks with dry rot, broken ventilators. You know what's weird about the mask shortage thing? I know a lot of you guys are e-commerce sellers as well. So I'm sure, any of you guys who have Alibaba suppliers are probably getting this. I would say I get 3 to 5 emails a day of people trying to sell me either hand sanitizer or face masks. So how there's a shortage when everybody's reaching out to me, I'm not really sure. My girlfriend, she works in the medical industry, and she was saying something to the effect of there's N95 masks, and there's another mask that's essentially identical to the N95 mask, but it's like a Chinese version. It's like the 95N mask instead or something. And I believe we aren't allowed to import those, even though there's a surplus of them. I don't see it for myself. I just don't. Let's see. Face coverings recommended, but Trump said, oh, did we already cover that one? I just don't see it for myself. I just don't. I don't see myself wearing a face mask either. OPEC delays meeting as Saudi and Russian tensions flare. In Italy, going back to work may depend on having the right antibodies. This one was interesting. I saw this one yesterday. Victims may be given passports so people know if they've had COVID-19. This one's a Daily Star. Coronavirus victims may be given passports so people know they've had COVID-19. Health Secretary Matt Hancock revealed the daily government coronavirus briefings that they are looking into immunity certificates to give people who've had COVID-19. So 33,718 people in the UK have tested positive. 2,921 have died. And they're looking at an immunity certificate, he announced. People who've had it and have the antibodies can therefore show immunity so they can get back to life as much as possible. I think that actually makes a lot of sense. Not having this blanket, let's not let anybody go out. Like the people who've had it, they can't get it again. At least that's my understanding of it. So let's let them out. Creeping authoritarian has finally... Okay, so here, this one I think kind of talks about... I think I heard a cryptocurrency YouTuber talking about this the other day. In Hungary, the pandemic was just an excuse. And this is something that is going to start happening everywhere. Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, has been in power since 2010. During that time, he has underinvested in hospitals. Instead, public money has gone to pet projects, many of them related to sports he enjoys. In his home village, Felskit, the government built an elaborate soccer stadium with heated field and 3,800 seats, which the New York Times noted is twice the number of people who live in the village. Meanwhile, the nearby hospital's emergency ward has struggled to cope with even an ordinary number of patients. On the evening of October, a visiting Times reporter found 2 harried doctors on call at midnight and 30 people waiting for treatment. So this would be an interesting story to read. Basically, I believe this guy shut down elections and put himself in power essentially forever because of the coronavirus. I'm not super up on that story, but that's an interesting one I wanted to catch up on. Russian doctor detained after challenging virus figures. Africa elite who sought treatment abroad are now grounded. Australian PM orders all foreign tourists home. Murders on the rise in Mexico despite restrictions. Let's see. Wuhan residents line up for hours to buy graves. Twins named Corona and COVID. See, the pandemic caused by a new virus may have brought the world to its knees, but that has not deterred a couple in Charlesburg to name their newborn twins Corona and COVID. That's kind of stupid. Let's see, what else do we got here? Sweden's liberal strategy questioned as death toll mounts. Maybe we'll take a look at that one. A German exception, why country's death rate is low. Let's see, let's take a look at the Sweden one. I believe Sweden's not taking this as seriously as a lot of other places. Stockholm, a spike in novel coronavirus infections and deaths in Stockholm has raised questions about Sweden's decision to fight the outbreak without resorting to lockdowns that have left much of Europe at a standstill. And here you can see, I assure you, we're open, happy hour, 1500 to 1800. You know, I heard an interesting stat. I'm getting a little bit sidetracked here. I heard an interesting stat out of, I know initially they were saying maybe as many as like 25% of people who get the coronavirus will never show symptoms and won't even know that they have it. I think in Iceland they said that number in their country is as high as 50%. But let's see, governments across Europe have closed schools and taken draconian measures to limit exposure to possible carriers, with Germany, for example, enforcing bans on more than 2 people meeting in public. That's crazy, 2 people. Among Sweden's Nordic neighbors, Denmark has closed its borders and shut down its schools. And Norway, as has Norway, while Finland has isolated its main urban region. Yet Swedes are able to go to restaurants, get a haircut, and send their children to school, even as the number of confirmed cases and deaths have mounted, above all in Stockholm, which accounts for more than half the fatalities. But Sweden's liberal approach, which aims to minimize disruption to social and economic life, is coming under fire as the epidemic spreads in the capital. We don't have a choice. We have to close Stockholm now, Cecilia Sonderberg. Okay, so here they're kind of wrestling with taking my approach, which is like, let's be cautious, let's lock down the at-risk people, but let's keep life going, versus doing what the rest of the world is doing and locking everybody in their homes. Let's see. Allah Akbar. Migrant knifeman kills 2, wounds 7 in France. Let's see. A German exception. We'll kind of wrap up after this. Why does Germany have lower death rates? They call them Hey, what are you doing? I don't know. I'm kind of tapped out on coronavirus news for now. But yeah, if you guys just want like kind of an interesting summary of some like clickbaity kind of sensational coronavirus news, feel free to check out Drudge Report. I'll link to him down below. Let me know your thoughts on the coronavirus as a whole. If there's any interesting stories that I've missed, feel free to drop your comments down below or chat in the right sidebar, because like I said, I'll probably make this a premiere for later on tonight. But yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button below, and we'll catch you guys on the next video.